Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Wednesday night. We're here to talk about some parliamentary debate topics. Okay, we got Tim Seavey, San Diego State University, and we got Matt Shapiro, Esquire. I'm Jared Miller. I'm your debate coach, professor of communications. We're going to be talking about one of the 5 topics that was released for NPTE. So I think we should give a little background. NPTE for anybody that doesn't know. First off, National Parliamentary Tournament of Excellence, NPTE, and it's like it's a qualifier rather than like an open. I guess if you're going to do that, so you have to like accumulate points throughout the season. You and your partner have to, and then you can qualify to go to this tournament.
How do you get those points, Jared? For all those who may not know,
it depends on the tournaments you go to, how large they are, which teams show up, and how far you get in the tournament. So you gotta win debates throughout the tournaments in open.
So like the Ryder Cup in golf, or the Nextel Cup in NASCAR.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I'm just glad we covered all potential fan bases.
Sounds good. And so year long, they have sweepstakes. They got these points going. And so right now, we got some standings as they were. And so these are the universities, the names of the competitors, their current points, and the placement that they got right now. Yeah, San Diego. I see them there. See them there.
So proud of those kiddos.
So it seems like NPTE is doing it a little bit different. So like when I was going to NPTE, there was no warning about what the topics were going to be. They could be anything. They changed every round. And so when you're there, each round is like you get 2 judges in each round. And so you're supposed to get a majority of the 12 ballots that you get over 6 rounds. And as long as you get a majority, then you go into double elimination. And I love double elimination, right? It's like once you lose twice, you're out. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like it. You know what I mean? And so, but I'm not sure what happened now is that they released 5 topics. I think just a few years ago, they were just releasing topic areas, right? It was like, here's the general areas that we're going to be doing, but now they're just giving out the topics. And I'm like,
genuinely interested. If anyone watching this or watches it afterwards and knows why that happened, I'm fascinated to know the justification. Because I kind of get topic areas. If nothing else, like it ensures that you've got some more research. Like no one's going to be completely blindsided. But like I get it. Like that's cool. But having actual topics, like how is that not just high intensity policy? You know?
Mm-hmm. It's funny. It's like a fusion. Like in public forum, for instance, there's one topic per tournament. Right. And you kind of have like a set, normally maybe even a couple months to work on that topic. This is not quite public forum because there's 5 topics, but there's also like, it's just funny how they're giving them prep time, pre-tournament time in Parley, and they're kind of fusing together in a certain way,
So like, I'm also wondering like if they're doing the 5 topics, when do they do it? Do they do like one topic for 2 rounds in the first 6? And then then they have 2 more topics for the out rounds.
They still don't know their sides, so
yeah. Well, what I'm saying is they probably do both sides, and then like they do the sort of double elimination thing throughout it. Well, I don't know. But what we do know is that it gives us a topic for this week and for the next 5 weeks. You know what I mean? So that'll be fun. So this week we're going to start with the first one that I got on my list. Here we are. United States federal government should significantly increase its development of energy and or resources on the Earth's moon. I got a little bit of experience with this because this was the NFALD topic about 3-4 years ago, I think. And so there's a bunch of easy affirmatives that the teams need to look out for. but from what I hear, parliamentary debate is getting fairly creative with their strategies and approaches to arguments. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think that just about any straightforward, legit policy is going to pass. I don't predict that really happening at all. I think that it's going to be a lot of like really unique. I mean, if policies actually happen, like I don't think that biopower stuff is really in the trend anymore. But like maybe that's probably as far as it would get. But it is getting a lot of like very theoretical and critical positions about the use of the federal government and discussion, like the use of the word federal government is like the link into all these.
Right. Well, I mean, you gotta,
it's cool. So like I can imagine there is kind of the first round of like what you would expect when you're dealing with like a mine the moon topic, and then there's the like first round of basic like, well, these are the positions against like why the United States federal government shouldn't be doing anything, right? And then like there's all these way higher level things. So I imagine it'll get really out there and really cool. But if nothing else, I think it raises some cool awareness. And I don't particularly love the idea that the topics are out like this, because I really do think it does end up just becoming like a blitz of 5 policy rounds. Like I'm sure that every person that's accepted a bid is just cutting cards like freaking mad right now, because why would you not? So I don't love that like Parley is once again just becoming policy like everything else. But I think that this is an interesting way to like really get deep on these subjects.
Go ahead, Jared, if you got something.
No, I was just saying it's nice. You know what I mean? Like it, to some degree, being able to look stuff up. But yeah, I mean, it's...
And, I think another point that it probably mitigates is that every Parley tournament that you've ever been to, no one says, all those topics were really great. I'm really glad that we had every one of those topics. That is like the first easiest thing to complain about. It's like, on movie sets, what do? You complain about the crafty, right? Whatever the food they serve you. At debate tournaments, you complain about the Parley topics and how garbage they were. Even if they were great and it, like you just complain about them because that's the thing to do. So this at least gets them off the hook, because they got to do so much like in-depth analysis and research ahead of time. And it wasn't like one tournament director or like, poor grad student that was just forced to come up with topics last minute.
There might, this is just to get real cynical. There might be an issue of like, they don't want some pre-disclosure to one school and not to some other school. I mean, I know that when there's kind of hot information like this, that could be a concern, and to kind of get ahead of it in COVID land, maybe they did that. But one thing I was going to talk about this topic is, in debate, oftentimes we take our cases, we'll take a resolution that's not too out there, okay, and we'll end up in our impact world out there, because that's how we chose to kind of steer our debate. And I think, Tim, what you're talking about, and partly what you're talking about as no plan is good, or it's kind of hard to explain a policy that will do this correctly, not even with critiques in mind, just because we've never gone to the moon and done something like this. So it's kind of like just the nature of that makes this difficult for the affirmative, let's just say. So you got to really push. We talked last week a lot about link stories, and feasibility is a word I wanted to talk about today. Just if you don't have some super creative plan to kind of do what we've been doing and somehow tie that into using moon energy or resources, and you literally are going to go run a plan that's like, we're going to go land on the moon and pull something off of it, you got to really enforce feasibility, and how even though nothing's been done like this, how you got to get some evidence with all this time you have to prep to show how it's possible. Because
that kind of gets into the solvency debate. I think that's a direct response to that. You're like, this isn't going to work. I don't know.
Sure. It's never worked or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, like they've done research on building like domes on Earth, and there's just no way that we currently have the technology to build that. You know what I mean? And so if they're talking like domes and stuff, like I'm like, okay, that's like, make sure that the technology that they're talking about is realistic. Well, let's talk about some low-hanging fruit first.
Please, let's do that.
Yeah. And so, like, what does the moon have that we want? Well, one of the things...
Gray dirt.
Yeah. Well, in that gray dirt, is helium-3, He3. All right. And it's just this ridiculous energy source that you could use with if you have the right reactor for it. And the efficiency level of it is enough to power the whole world several times over. And the cool thing is that nobody lives on the moon, so you're not kicking anyone out to gather a bunch of He3. You know what I mean? It's like that's one really, really unique part about developing on the moon or a policy like that. You know what I mean? It starts getting into like critical problems, I think. But at the very least, you know, I mean, He3 is like I don't know. It was like V case, the really easy case that I was teaching, you know, beginners about. Where it was, and there's a lot of research on there. Yeah.
How do you physically get it off of the moon?
Yeah. See, and that's always a good solvency question. A lot of it is remote work, I mean, because it's literally just laying on the surface. You're like it doesn't require really difficult mining operations to gather it. The hard part is getting it to Earth. Now, there are some people that have like these ideas about actually creating the reactor right there and creating like a radiation beam that projects the energy to receptors on Earth, and that's how they use the energy. And that's insane. And then, like, you know what I'm saying? You start getting crazy, you know, with it. And so, I mean, I like science.
You're talking about a space ray.
Yeah.
Hey, I like, you know what's funny is, call me crazy, I love how this resolution encourages that. Like I mean it really forces you to get creative, right? This isn't like we're taking this to the moon. This is like the resolution asks us to do something with the moon. So you're forced into the spot a little bit on the AF, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the issue.
So I think there might be a really cool, it's like sort of advantage to visualizing things like this. So like just using the rhetoric of visualization and why that's beneficial, like socially, might be a good way to kind of introduce that. You know, it's like
I think that's where maybe you've got a good, you know, chunk of advantage. Like where we put up all of these like impossible, you know, obstacles. Like, but we got there. We successfully made it there and back in the 60s. Like, I think we've done tougher things as far as the moon goes. Like, I feel like that era of astronauts, like, that's not hard. You know, like there are obviously a million difficulties.
Yeah,
I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cost. Like it was like money was no object in the 60s. Now it's
right. I mean, neither was the environmental regulation.
We don't make money.
A million things we just didn't particularly care about. But, but yeah, so I think where that it's neat because of nothing else. It is like all of the auxiliary benefits to solving giant problems, right? So like that's a common argument just for like space exploration, like why to fund space exploration, because of all of the auxiliary benefits that you don't know that you will come across until you solve these really gigantic problems. Right? So that's cool in itself. So I think that one of the cool areas that it goes to, just because I happened to finish this recently, was the novel Artemis by Andy Weir. So he also wrote The Martian, that movie that Matt Damon was in. So he wrote the book for that, and so he wrote the second novel called Artemis. That's like as realistic as can be, but still fictional story about the colonized moon. So the neat thing is that I like about it is he was Andy Weir was originally a scientist. So he worked, I think it was at JPL, and he just started writing The Martian as like some fun, you know, fiction on the side. But all of his scientist friends started chiming in on like, oh, you know, actually it would be like this, and they would explain the math and all, you know, the propulsionists and the botanists and like, all the different people that were, you know, checking this out would give him the information of what it would really be like. So he went through tremendous effort to make it as realistic as possible. So his book Artemis is talking about a lot of the like realistic, you know, pining for power and the resources and things extracted from it. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. And in the book, at least, but there's some legitimacy to this if you read through the evidence, that aluminum is one of the biggest resources that can be extracted from the moon. And I think you get some environmental trade-off there when you talk about how, yes, aluminum is technically recyclable, but the recycling process on Earth is super awful for the environment, like almost worse than the mining process initially. And the mining process is like the worst of the worst because most aluminum mines are in like the rainforest, like the places that you really don't want to, take stuff from.
The rainforest. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's rather important. So I think that there's something to be said for there is no life whatsoever, like that you're not harming any living thing in any capacity that exists on the moon. Now, granted, you can talk about all the deleterious
that we know of,
burned rocket fuel and the money that goes into it, right? Right, that we know of. But no matter where or how you get aluminum on Earth, it's gonna hurt some living thing. So if you have a general value of life, like if you say that life is more important than dollars, I think you've got at least a decent case to be able to say that like aluminum, for all of its many important uses, exists on the moon, wouldn't hurt anyone to get it, bring it back here, don't mind, or recycle Earth aluminum.
Or just say iPhone is greater than life, and then use that as your criteria.
Right? So, and actually, you nailed it because rare earth minerals are the other like really common low-hanging fruit. Besides, He3, but rare earth minerals are the other thing that exist in pretty solid abundance, like ytterbium and other like fun words that are really lots of Scrabble points. Those exist on the moon. And those are things.
Learn those words before you go into your round. You know what I mean? Like, learn the word, say the word. Don't be the guy. No. Say the word.
Okay. But you don't need to get all weird like that either. There's just water on the moon. There's a lot of water.
Totally, right? Like, there you
go.
No
one cares about water, Jared.
Yeah.
No
but
one.
here's the thing. Like, this one wouldn't be like. So water's really heavy, though, right? So to get that back home, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. The point of developing water on the moon would be to actually build a base on the moon. It's a get off the rock affirmative. You know what I mean? It's like I think this it definitely lends to getting off the rock affirmatives, which are I think you've heard some of the arguments I've already made about how we passed the point of no return. Climate change is just going to kill us all.
We need to get off this rock.
Yeah, that's what it is. And so and clearly the first step is hopping on the moon. We got to make sure that we have a source of water first, no matter where you go. So to develop water and we got to get the hell out of here. We might be able to do that in 100 years if we start now.
I got two things. Quick, funny one is nuke Mars for world peace. I think you could run that app here somehow, get creative. Another thing that kind of popped into my mind, and this is maybe more of like a creative, not creative because we're all creative, but like a way to kind of be like, oh, we're not going to the moon, like tide. The moon controls the tides, right? So if you're able to maybe do an app about, getting energy or resources from waves and talking about how that's relative to the moon, that might be a way to kind of negotiate around the insanity, which is mining something physically off of the moon.
Well, that's kind of an interesting point. Yeah. If you said like
argument. So a topicality argument on the on versus from.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if the topic you need to develop resources brought back from the moon, or is it you're allowed to stay there? So let's take a look at the wording really quick again here.
So it's from the Earth's moon, and I think that Matt, you're onto something there. Like energy from Earth's moon involves tides and waves.
The gravity from the moon
and waves for energy. Like I think that's kind of legit.
But for the moon.
And that's the beauty of like right now, you don't have, 15 minutes to prep your response to it. You can have like 9 front lines to topicality. Be like, here's all of the reasons why this is absolutely a resource from the moon.
Okay, so I had another one, which was this is one of my I love funny cases. All right, there's this thing called moon water, and it's a sort of pagan Wiccan sort of thing where you actually leave water out in the moon, and it's supposed to gather the moon's energy in the water, right?
Yeah.
And so my argument would be for like, how do you tie the United States federal government in there? It's like, well, the army doesn't allow people to practice Wiccan, so if the
werewolves
army,
or something.
Yeah, if the army were to actually allow, so they wouldn't just have chaplains, they would also like have witches in the army now, and they would make moon water, and that's my affirmative right there. It's like I think we should let witches in the army.
Yeah. We just need to manufacture plows that go on werewolves and then utilize the moon for energy, right? I think that's another one you could go.
Oh, I think Darren's a fan of your tides, AF. Not bad.
It's like there's already so much good argument. Like there's so much good evidence for like harvesting wave energy. Like that is a seemingly endless supply, and it doesn't hurt living things for the most part, right? Like
even like solar energy at night in the moon, right? I mean, that might be a stupid question, but like on a full moon in Southern California, for instance, I mean, that's probably quite a bit of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just getting it to Earth without having to send a rocket, anything you can do to that in that regard would probably help you as far as the, feasibility stuff we were talking about.
All right. I think it's time that we talked a little neg though. Like you got to go. Yeah. You got to go.
There's some big, blatant, obvious things on the neg. Jared, you want to take it from the top?
I think
that the moon is inherently classist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it out there. All right.
No, I do think that you sort of bite into a colonialism when you start thinking about it's space colonialism. You know what I mean? I think
that's out and use it for profit.
Yeah.
Well, think about who is going to be the people who get out into who are allowed to get off the rock. It's like that's what it is, and it's like the people who are going to profit the most. But just the idea about we need to expand our borders is kind of like that's what you're doing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's kind of hard to avoid the international relations implications to that, but the core of colonialism that's in that idea is kind of hard to step around.
I think just as a basic crux, we've talked about taking out what's agent enforcement funding. Those are all called something very specific. Spec argument. Yeah. Funding. We talk about funding and efficiency, right? Like if I can prove on paper that it's much cheaper to make a solar panel, a solar energy power plant than it is to fly rockets to get in massive amounts of water or whatever, H3, whatever they're trying to say. You just explain how funding, we could allocate our money to more conventional greenhouse, green energy sources, and that solves the problem of energy better. I mean, that's a neg premise just globally that goes into 1,000 different things. But and just to go back now on the AF, just to flip around, one way to fight that, maybe don't focus on efficiency. Maybe you're focusing on leading the world in innovation. And as long as you're still getting energy and innovation, you could maybe have ground there. But if you straight up are saying like this is the best way to get energy from somewhere, you better have a lot of feasibility. You better have a lot of facts showing how that's actually true, because the expense of this is, I think no one here is going to argue, the expense of this is massive, and it's all in theory, right?
Sure. I mean, I think you can, for those teams that are, bold enough to wage into like U.S. hedge good arguments, I think every dollar spent on space exploration tends to stick in U.S. pockets. Like I'm sure you can find all kinds of resources, evidence and things on the subject,
or inspires a 6-year-old to become a scientist, like that.
Sure, right. And so like those are the most like Disney beautiful versions of what that looks like. But like even in just a straight like, if we invest in huge amounts of money that goes to Tesla for a contract, like that gives workers in Hawthorne, California, a whole bunch of dollars. And then there's all these, there's a ton of piece of evidence out there talking about how like every one tech job supports a minimum of 7 supporting roles, like because every person that works in tech also makes money, and so that their finances have to be dealt with by a bookkeeper and a CPA, and then they have to live in a place, and so that supports construction, whatever. So there's there's economists that talk about why tech jobs specifically are these like keystone type jobs, because they support so many surrounding areas, right? Because like all techie people are hipsters, and so they really want to have farm fresh, table restaurants or whatever. So you can make arguments about just the domestic economics
allegedly
come from investing in, space production of things like that. So I think there's good cases to be made there that as soon as it's like that kind of domestic, flow. But I think that I think as Jared says, like you're inevitably going to be biting into these like, okay, the United States federal government is now going to be spending massive amounts of money on what again? So I think when you can point out any other issue,
their land,
greater issue.
Yeah, I mean,
it's outweigh on magnitude and timeline. Like there's this little pandemic thing that's still going on, right? So I mean, I suppose you can put your timeline like 10 years out or something. So like we're going to invest in it in 2035 to get out of any current crises.
But like you also think about just like what you're sending out there. It's like okay, now after 50 years we haven't gone out into space, and now what we're going to do is we're going to try to find a profitable way to expand our borders indefinitely. And like that, if you look at it that way, that's kind of scary about what the human species is now going to be like spreading out across the galaxy is like this sort of colonialist. So like that's an interesting uniqueness argument in my opinion, that if we're doing this in space, that means if it works, that's what's going to go. It not just universal, like literally universal, right? So like it's literally going to be universal, and so we need to be really, really careful about what we send out into space. And this just doesn't, and I think that this is hastily done, even on a 10-year timeline. I think that we need to be better. Like we need to get our shit in order before we start getting off the rock. You know what I mean?
Another quick neg that argument you might want to make, or it could fall into place where in this system or in this theory of we're going to go to the moon and do something. There's a multi-level plan neg argument that's saying like you can't have your plan has to be kind of one thing. You can't have them do this and then have them do this and have them do this. I mean, that's not always very strong. I guess you could run a plan that says I'm going to do 10 things in one plan, but there's sometimes if there's vagueness or ambiguity in kind of where their plan starts and stops, then highlight the fact that they're not accounting to get a rocket to the moon. They're just building a station near the moon to get close to it. Like the multi-level plan. What's that called? You guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
Fiat abuse is like when they've got a multi-actor fiat, so it's like 15 different people that are doing it, or 15 different steps. So like you're allowed to have like multiple planks in a plan, but yeah, like if you fiat too many things, understandable.
Call them out on vagueness. Call them out on they are not articulating exactly how this works. And that needs to be said with reason. I mean, if someone really does lay on you like a great link story getting you to the moon, be careful just saying they're crazy. But if they don't, and they give you a lot of ground because you truly are like, I don't know, you didn't explain to me or the judge, how you are solving these problems, how you are actually operationalizing this plan that you're saying. Fiat abuse. Be careful. Like they're not allowed to just allege anything is possible.
Actually, Matt, you bring up a good point. I don't know if they've ever laid out topics this far and it like first off entirely in their explicit wording or this far in advance. So the idea of like, well, we only had 15 minutes to prep is now out the window. So if there's anything that's vague about the plan, like I think you've got a lot of ground on the neg to really call that hard because like, nah, man, you now have had like however many weeks to prep,
and there's a slew of critique
and get everything polished. Fall back on like, oh, it's limited prep.
I think what you're doing though, on the neg side, you really gotta, the affirmative just has to prep out this you know what I mean, this colonial
creative feasibility.
I do think that you can. I think that you can have an interesting debate about it because there's never been the amount of resources that are potentially available to the world. You know what I mean? It's like in like colonialism was really sparked by like scarce resources and trying to secure that for your own people or something.
Probably a bunch of reasons why, but hey, that's probably one of them.
But now there's a single, like you can go send out a drone, drag a meteor back, and it's worth, like they literally found one asteroid that was worth more than all of the economies combined.
So like gold in it or something, right?
Like everyone could have gotten $3 million in value.
It's a debater's debate. It's like we're gonna go crazy in here, and it's about being convincing, and just playing the game, and don't fight the resolution too hard, and just they're giving you time to research for your Parley tournament, so go get to it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
you recommend they research it or wait till 15 minutes before, Jared?
Wait, yeah, just be real purists about it. Like, hey, this is parliamentary debate. We do things in the last 15 minutes.
I would guess there's some coaches prepping their teams out there. Everybody, I'm not going to tell you they are, but they might be. Maybe take a look. I don't know.
You know what? I kind of like the idea. It's just like granting students the ability to procrastinate. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to prepare. Like if you be well read, you know what I mean? Now it's kind of like, oh, that's out the window. If you're not pulling, freaking.
You get to feel really bad, a lot of shame when you've had it for 15 weeks and you didn't do any research, not just 15 minutes. You're like,
I think it's only fair to bring back like legit policy rules. You can only have that which is on paper printed out. So like bring back tubs. Like I want to see on Zoom, even though we're literally debating through computers, only tubs. Like that's the only tool. I want like the cool indexing systems that people came up with in the 80s. Like I want tubs back for this topic.
All right, we are.
He's alone on that. He's alone on that one. Everybody,
stickers, man.
No more tubs.
Ourselves, man. We sound like old school debaters. Like what my coach used to sound like. I remember when debate was better than this. All right. Hey everyone, that's our time. We're gonna do another topic next week from the NPTE tournament, and so catch us then. All right, we got Matt Shapiro Esquire, Tim CV from San Diego State, and I'm your coach professor, Jared Kabuka Miller. All right, see y'all later.